As of this past Christmas Eve, it's been announced that the Beatles songs are now streaming. In related news, my urine is still streaming. And in neither case should these things be celebrated or supported. Hi there, vinyl community, music lovers, music haters, streamers, whatever. This is a response to a video that Joe, his screen name is Mean Mr. Mayo. He made it, when was it? He posted it on Christmas Day. He posted a video called The Beatles Are Streaming This Christmas. And I'll post a link down below so you can check out his video. Joe is celebrating the fact that the Beatles are now streaming. And to be fair, this is, the Beatles were a fantastic band. They're clearly Joe's favorite band, and I understand how he's jazzed about this. And his opinion is that it's not just his opinion. I'm sure this is fact. More people will be exposed to the Beatles' music, and they're probably going to add a few people who enjoy the music and maybe collect the memorabilia or the physical media down the road, whatever. Before I get into this, I'm not picking on Joe on any of this. Joe's a cool guy, even though I comment on his videos and he doesn't even watch my videos because I talk about records that are from, this century. And he's a son of a bitch that just won't say anything in the comments on my videos. This is not picking on Joe. And Joe knows I'm just messing around. I love Joe. Joe's awesome. And blah, blah, blah. So anyway, there's a couple of things going on here. Sony, back up a second. As of right now, the rights to the Beatles songs are owned, to my knowledge. And I say and first of all, I'm going to back up a second bit. All this information is to the best of my knowledge. I don't like to fact check things because I think facts are for suckers, but this should be mostly right. Sony is a company in partnership with the estate of a formerly black guy who used to sleep with children, little boys that were unrelated to him, and somehow that's not creepy. That company owns the rights right now to the Beatles songs, and they picked them up. They got them in like the early 1980s. So when the Beatles music gets sold or streamed or somebody gets paid for Beatles music, it's Sony getting paid. Spotify is one of the largest music streaming services available. Sony is a partner of Spotify, where I think just now they're putting Spotify apps embedded within the Xbox game consoles. So you can stream music through those consoles. But anyway, this is going to be all convoluted because I didn't make notes because notes are for suckers and I'm just going to ramble. So the Beatles music is now available for streaming on the various streaming services. So what does that mean? It means several things. Number one, Sony, who's already a partner with Spotify and I'm sure other streaming services, is going to make even more money, and independent musicians are going to make even less money. Here's what goes on. Sony is not the greatest partner to musicians to begin with. I think earlier this year it came out, the details of Sony's contract from a few years ago with Spotify came out, and there's a lot of nefarious bullshit that was going on in that contract. Musicians get, paid per stream, but not really, at least with Spotify. So theoretically, any money that Spotify pays to Sony should be, Sony takes their cut and then they filter it down to their musicians. However, Sony, in this contract with Spotify, decided to demand $45 million as an advance, split over 3 years. And that $45 million, by giving that advance, Sony agreed to a lesser amount per stream, as it were, to be paid to the artists, to be paid to Sony also per stream. So that $45 million most likely is money that is not going to get paid to their stable of artists whatsoever. Musicians, I should say. I hate calling them artists, and it just blah, blah, blah. So, really that $45 million should be split, as royalties to the rights holders, be it to the musical right holders. There's different types of rights with music. There's publishing rights, I guess, which go to the people who compose the music, and that could be broken down further into like the rights for the lyrics and the rights for the sheet music or whatever. But a lot of times it's the same thing. So there's the rights to the people who compose the music. It's the publishing rights, and then there's the phono media rights, which is the rights to the recording to play it again or some shit like that. So anyway, the deal that Sony cut with Spotify was to make sure that Sony Corporate got that $45 million out of the way in their own pockets, and that doesn't go to musicians at all. So like that part of it is bullshit, and I don't mean it didn't happen. I mean it's a bullshit way to treat musicians. And in addition, you've got the Beatles being streamed and people buying more Beatles music. It doesn't matter right now. It goes to Sony. In a couple of years, 2-3 years, I think the Copyright Act of 1978 will kick in, meaning that for recordings that were made prior to 1978, it's either 1976 or 1978, for music that was recorded prior to 1978, even if the rights to the music were sold to like a Sony, the rights revert to the original composer in this case after I think 56 years after the music it was made. So in 2 or 3 years, Paul McCartney's still around, and he and John Lennon wrote a lot of the Beatles songs. So he will start to get those rights back to songs probably like a year at a time, starting with the first Beatles record where, for whatever songs that were written. And that's going to be kind of a small amount too. The Beatles, when they first came out, were kind of a cover band. And I don't mean that disparagingly. What I mean is a fair amount of the songs on the albums, like with most groups back in the early 60s, were covers of other songs, because that helped make the record more popular, make it sell. Because until you're, renowned for your own music in your own right, you want to be able to sell to as many people as possible. And it took a while, I think, before the Beatles put out an album that was written only by Lennon and McCartney, and sometimes, Harrison and Ringo Starr. So there's a lot going on there. If you essentially, pay for streaming each month, for streaming of music, and you do it because you support the musicians, there's two things going on. Number one, you're not really supporting the musicians. And number two, you're in a very small minority. I think most people that pay for music streaming are doing it it's a commodity. They can have it just running all day. And that in itself kind of leads to another thing, which means less money for independent musicians. What happens is, there's a couple things going on. First of all, let's say you spend $10 a month on a streaming music service, and let's say $6 of that is profit or whatever should go to the musicians. Musicians don't really, at least with Spotify, get paid per stream. They get paid a percentage of the total streams, of the overall streams that their music was streamed. And that's a convoluted way to say when you add a popular band like the Beatles to a streaming service, and those songs are going to be on a lot of playlists that people click to play in the background, because people who pay $10 a month for streaming tend to play music all day long or whatever they're doing. The Beatles songs playing are taking a percentage of the total streams and decreasing, for the smaller artists, the percentage of time that their song is playing, or their album, compared to all other artists. So it's kind of a weird situation where even if more people subscribe to, say, Spotify, if you're adding more and more musicians, and hugely popular musicians and their songs to the service, those songs will be played more. And even though the pie might be like financially a little bit bigger, the percentage, because you got these big mega artists like the Beatles being played, the percentage of the smaller artists, the percentage of times that their song is being played is a smaller and smaller piece of that pie. So they actually can kind of lose money on this. If streaming was done right, say I paid, $10 a month for streaming, which I don't. And I'm not, making judgments on people who do. People do things for different reasons. But if I pay, if there's like $6 of profit in what I'm paying, in my opinion, that $6 should be split over the musicians that I listen to. So if I listen to if I listened to 6 different artists or musicians in the course of the month that my $6 of profit goes towards, in my mind, only those 6 artists should be splitting the money from my particular subscription. But that's not what happens. Even if I don't watch the Beatles, meaning Sony, is getting paid. And that's why this is all bullshit. Don't stream the Beatles. Don't pay for streaming, period. If you buy directly from the band, buy directly from the label, buy physical media, don't stream. This whole thing about the Beatles streaming now, it's not good for anybody except Sony right now. And, they've sold as many records as they can. There's been like a bazillion reissues of Beatles records, ever since Sony got the rights in 83 or 84, whenever they got it. And my suspicion is that those physical media sales are like falling off enough where they go, all right, now it's time to stream. Let's cash in while we can, because we're about to lose the rights to these songs to Paul McCartney in a couple of years. So we need to stream now and get paid while we can. I'm not just a sweepingly anti-corporation person. Corporations are people. There's a lot of, most small businesses are corporations. There are larger businesses that people are, built up from nothing. Corporations are often people, but in this particular case with Sony and the ghost of Michael Jackson, his estate, this is bad. It's bad for music. It's bad for independent musicians. Whatever you do, don't pay for streaming. There's plenty of free streaming out there if that's what you want to have. And go out and buy physical media if you support musicians. And you may not. You may like music, but you may not like musicians, and that's fair. That's an absolutely fair way to look at this. But if you go to a show, you buy a T-shirt or a CD there, more of that money is going directly to the musician. Independent musicians are getting next to nothing from streaming, and it's bullshit. So if you care about musicians, stop paying for streaming. I'll sign off by saying I enjoy the Beatles. I have Beatles records, and this is not an anti-Beatles thing. But right now, Beatles aren't getting a penny out of this. So, Joe, one might argue that I did this just to make you watch one of my videos because it has Beatles in the title now. And I'll leave it to you to determine whether all this is just full of shit or if I'm an evil genius and I made you watch a video of mine. I am an evil genius, but actually, no. I was serious about everything I talked about here. So, Happy New Year.